Are you a high-performing real estate investor who's looking to further elevate your performance? If so, download our free guide, Raising the Bar, 5 Steps to Elevate Your Habits by joining our insider network at elevatepod.com. This guide, created by yours truly, has the power to put your transformation on autopilot and exponentially change your trajectory. Go get your free copy now at elevatepod.com.
Welcome to Elevate, the masterclass where we dissect the elements of exceptional achievement and lifestyle design with a focus on personal growth and real estate investing. Now, here's your host, Tyler Chesser.
Bryan Flaherty, my man, what's going on?
Mr. Chesser, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all the listeners.
I like the good morning when it's like 2:45 p.m.
Well,
That's
you
good.
never know when someone's listening out there.
That's right, man. It's it's good to be with you. Round 3.
Third time's the charm, right?
Nobody's been on Elevate 3 times, so you're the first.
That is
What
a
does that
lot
feel?
to live up to, my friend.
So here's what happens. So it's either you're really good and we're just gonna keep riding that momentum, or it's our third revision of the first round. What are you thinking?
I hope it's the former and not third time, and we're just trying to finally get it right here.
I know. But we were reflecting on, obviously how far we've come since that first time.
Yes.
Both of us individually, collectively, so forth. That was 2 years ago. Now, obviously, you and I have done a lot of different things, but life has changed drastically as well. So, man, give me a sense. Catch Elevate Nation up on what's been going on in the Flaherty household. Obviously, you've been welcoming new babies, new children into this world, but give us a sense of what's been going on with you.
Yeah, it is fun. Before we started recording, we talked about that. And 2 years on some level seems like not that long ago, but it's probably a good metaphor for what should be happening in life. We are very different in a good way than we were 2 years ago, both personally, professionally. So I like starting it out like that. That's great. It's good to be back. Always fun to talk to Elevate Nation. But like you mentioned, my wife and I were blessed to welcome a third child into the world 3 months ago now, in April of 2021. We're recording this here in the middle of July. So we have 3 under 5. We have 2, for those that didn't listen before, I have 2 little boys, ages 4 and 3, and now baby girl this time around. So again, my wife and I are very blessed. Our kids keep us very humble at home and also remind us what we're doing this all for, man. And in the midst of all the fun we're having at work, I get to go home and have the same type of craziness and fun on the home life as well.
Yeah, I love it. And they're you actually are getting sleep. Like Mary Catherine, big shout out to Mary Catherine, because she's sleeping through the night. She's like this queen baby. So what's the deal?
Big shout out to Mama Bear. Mama Bear gets all the credit for that. But yes, again, we are blessed and humbled at the home front. Kids are sleeping. Brothers are acting like they should. They love sister 1 minute, off to the next. You're off to the next thing the next minute. And I feel for her first boyfriend in the future, because they're already super and overprotective of her, as 2 older brothers should be.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, no, it's been really cool to watch you guys incorporate her, and obviously it's just been so natural, and you guys are impressive as parents. I mean, ultimately, obviously, we do what we do in real estate for an outcome. We talk about that all the time. Real estate is a vehicle towards creating outcomes that you want in your life. That's why I wanted to start there. It's like, hey, what's going on at home? What's going on with the family? What's going on with the things that are most important? Because obviously, to you and I, like, man, we're driven beyond belief, and we're going to continue to push. We're going to continue to raise the bar. But ultimately, what's most important is what's most important. So, man, is there anything else that you would add to that?
No, there's no doubt about it. And I think, the more going on at home, at least for me, that's more fuel in the tank for what we do at CF Capital, and say, man, this is, everything we have going on at home is fantastic. It's good, but I'm the dad. I got to provide. Like, it's time to go, and it's time to present opportunities to our listener base and to our investors. So it all compounds on itself. And we're in a very good place right now.
Yeah. And before we talk about, some of the stuff that we've been doing with CF Capital, because obviously you and I, we actually about a year ago, we sat down and we kind of talked about what CF Capital is all about, our philosophies, our core values, really what our outlook on the market is, and our approach and our business strategy and all these kind of things, which is culminating, it's becoming a reality. There's been a lot of things that we've accomplished recently and so forth. And so we can talk about some of that. We can also talk about some insights that we see in the marketplace. But before we talk about that, I think that the personal stuff is important. And I want to get people a sense of sort of how you live your life personally, how you dedicate yourself to your own evolution, how you lead others, whether it's in your family or otherwise, in doing that. But we started with children. We started with family.
Sure.
I'm curious, would you be able to share a little bit about your philosophy, or maybe not philosophy, but just your approach on managing the family life? Because this is one of the things that I think is really cool about what you and Channing do. Big shout out to Channing Flaherty as well. She'll send me texts, by the way. She'll say, "Oh, I listened to this, that, and the other, and I loved this." And so I got to give Channing a big shout out. So Channing, if you're listening right now, just know we're giving you a big cheers. But Bryan, this is a really long-winded way for me to ask you, about like the home life and managing your family. And, you almost look at your family, and not in a sense of lack of love, but you almost look at your family as like a business in a certain way, and it's like it's its own unit. So could you talk a little bit about that and how you view that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of it goes back to intentionality. And there's going to be a lot of crossover that we can probably talk about today, both personal wise and business wise. And again, it gets back to being intentional about the outcomes that we want to have. And again, you see this in everything we do at CF Capital, but we see it on the home front, like you're talking about. And we are very intentional with what we want to do with our children and the opportunities we want to provide them. But also, my wife and I, we look at one another as we're almost like partners. Like you said, we are the partners in the business together, the business of raising our family, and we're all in sales to a certain degree, and we're selling our kids on, the straight and narrow in life and kind of leading the good life. But we've been, you talked with Katie in one of your previous episodes about incorporating kind of the weekly meetings and,
Yep.
the monthly and the quarterly goals and 3-year and 10-year. Well, Channing and I were blessed to realize we needed something like that about a year ago now. And we went out and we planned out our 10-year and our 3-year plans, our 1 year, and we back it all in. And we are, the creators of our family, but we're not the only ones. Like I just mentioned, there's 3 little kiddos. And so we are starting to now institute quarterly rocks or quarterly goals into their life and
That's so
make
cool.
them a part of that as well. And it's amazing. I mean, my boys are 4 and 3, and obviously baby girl isn't quite there yet, but the 4-year-old and 3-year-old, they are so much more capable than what we give them credit for as parents, just speaking in generalities. And it dawned on me a while back. My 4-year-old he came home from school and he was saying something. I kind of looked at him. I was like, where in the world did you learn that from? And it was so far beyond what I could comprehend that he could do. And it was just a good example of, hey man, give them a little bit of, dangle that carrot a little bit, show them the right way and get out of their way and let them do it for themselves. And that's something we've really been trying to implement into our children's life is the power of choice and letting them make their own decisions and realize that there's consequences that come with that, both good, potentially, negative consequences. Obviously, we're not going to let them get hurt, anything like that. But at the same time, it's a lot like what we do in business. And we say, hey, we're here to support you. Here's all the resources that you need. Now go be great on your own. And as mom and dad will help be there for you, but at the same time, you got to learn to live and lead and go on your own path as well. So again, it's a lot of crossover with what we're doing at the business front as well.
Yeah, and it's cool. I was just thinking about this as you were talking about, creating the vision, executing the vision, whether it's a big vision, whether it's, over the next month or what have you, but letting that sort of be, shared in terms of not only yourself, your wife, but also even your children, I think is really cool. And it's also illustrative to business owners because sometimes, as leaders or as the entrepreneurs or as the investors, we say, this is the way, this is the path. And we don't really, remember, and maybe this is my own self at times, we don't remember that if we surrender, if we let go a little bit and we let someone else step up and show us, sort of their power and their vision, that it might even be greater than perhaps what we would have set forth as well. So I think it's really cool that you're saying, all right, kids. Like we got 4-year-olds, we got, what do you have? 3? You got 3 and a 2?
4, 3, and 2 months.
4, 3, and 2 months. And so what you're saying is, look, be a part of this with us and think about what type of, vision could be shared. And maybe some of it's silly, but some of it's like, wait a minute, you really surprised me, right? Is there anything else that you would add to that?
A mentor of mine told me one time, hire really good people and get the hell out of their way. And we've tried to bring that philosophy both into CF Capital, but in a way kind of adapt it and bring it into the home life as well. And say, raise good children, give them the opportunities they need, give them examples, and get out of their way and let them learn and, fall on their own. And that's how they're going to be able to, go out and be great by themselves. Mom and dad can't show them the way their whole way through life, because at some point you got to rip that cord, and mom and dad aren't always going to be there. So to me, the earlier they learn, the better, and give them a little bit of power of choice along the way. And it's amazing when you allow people to feel like they're a part of the decision making, how much more they get into it, as opposed to just pointing, telling, and saying, ruling with an iron fist and saying this is how it's going to be. And it's incredible the results you'll see in the process.
I love it. And you talk about hiring great people and get the hell out of their way. I think about even just how you manage your family. Like, you have a nanny involved, and it's not so that you can be removed, but it's so that you can amplify, and so that, your children can get what they need, and so that you guys can still do what you need to do, right? You and I talk about who, not how all the time. Mm-hmm. And this is a prime example of that. But is there any thoughts or, experiences that you'd like to share with regard to your nanny? Because I know you've been with her for a while now.
Yeah, she's been with us for 3 years now. So shout out Miss Stacy if she's listening as well. But again, it's an example of just she's not our nanny that we hire on. Like, she is legitimately part of our family. When our 4-year-old and 3-year-old name the people in our family and count the number of people that we have under our roof, not only do they include the dog, they include Miss Stacy as well. Awesome. And we look at it as, my wife and I don't say, all right, Miss Stacy, here's what we're going to do today, or here's where you need to take the kids. It's, hey, Miss Stacy, what do you need help with? How do you need to be supported? What's the best way that we can help support you while you're spending time with the kids, while we're spending time at the office? And again, it's amazing the results that we'll see both from our kids, how they behave and treat Miss Stacy and talk, and you just interact with her, as well as the amazing ideas that she comes up with, and the activities that they'll go out and do that I would have never even thought of. I didn't even know half of them existed here in our city. And next thing I know is it's some of my kids' favorite places. So it's another good example of just saying, in a leadership position, you're really there to support. You're not there to tell people what to do. It's to support them in what they want to be doing and need to be doing.
Yeah, and if you have the right people, they'll take that and run with it. And if you don't, I think it shows itself pretty quickly, and everybody can part ways and do their own thing. But Absolutely. It almost seems like it's like a culture, right? Just as it would be in a company, or in our company, as an example with CF Capital, it's about setting the culture of not only having fun and goofing off at times and cracking jokes, but also a standard of excellence, right? But also, a standard of creativity. It's almost like you're giving the space for not only Miss Stacy, as you call her, or your children, to be a part of that creativity, or to create that culture with you and alongside of you, or maybe even lead you at times. I think there's a lot of value in that. And to me, like, that's what true leadership is. It's not about, hey, follow me. It's about, sometimes you might need to follow them, right? Is there anything
no
you
doubt
add
about
to that?
it. And a lot of times, a lot of the best ways for me to learn, even as a parent, is just to sit back and observe. There's times where I'll just sit back and kind of be a fly on the wall and observe what's happening and say, man, this is great stuff. This is things that I need to be implementing when I'm spending time with my children. And, or, gosh, look, it looks like they need support this way or that way, and here's how I can add value. So yeah, it is absolutely a culture, and it's something that, whether it's at home or at the workplace, we're always trying to implement and lean into that culture.
So tell me this, I get a front row view of this every day, like the commitment, the diligence, and the consistency that you bring 7 days a week is amazing. It's phenomenal. And one of the things that I hear a lot is, I don't have time for that. I don't have time for this. I can't do that because of this, this, and this. And you're just not that type of person who makes excuses, whether it's to get things done in business, to get that next deal across the finish line, to put the offers out there, to make the calls, to send the emails, to, do what it takes to accomplish rocks or goals, or even set new rocks or goals, or even just share that vision, or sit down for a podcast. I mean, with 3 kids, with a growing business, with all these things that we have going on, I mean, tell me about how are you fitting in not only just all of that stuff, but how are you still, you're still engaging in personal development, personal growth. You're still educating yourself. You're still challenging yourself to think different, but you're also inputting new information and perhaps repetitious information of things that you've already learned. And you're recentering yourself along that. So could you talk a little bit about how are you fitting that in? How are you making that happen? How has your schedule changed over the past couple of years and so forth? Maybe you could speak a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, first off, I appreciate the kind words and know that the feeling is mutual, and I can't imagine how much, that you accomplish in a day. So I'm just trying to keep up most of the time.
It's a good competition, by the way.
It's good to have accountability partners, in all seriousness.
Yeah.
It is good to have accountability partners, whether that's accountability at home on my side, it's my wife, whether it's my children, they hold me accountable, whether it's business partners like yourself or other third-party providers that we have, or third-party partners, that accountability goes a long way. But really, I mean, I'm no different than anybody else. I'm no different than you. I'm no different than any of the listeners. We all have 168 hours in every week, the same as Bezos and the president and any other leader you want to point to. We all have the same amount of time. That's the one thing nobody can get more of, and one thing no one can give back and have less of. So it's really about, again, I mentioned it at the start of the podcast, it's being intentional with that time and ensuring that I'm maximizing it at all times. And that could be, first thing in the morning, that's later in the evenings, that's on the weekends, whatever it is that I need to be doing, it's being intentional and that there's no lost time there. A lot of that goes back to planning and just being aware of what needs to get done. Also, it gets back to having great partners, whether it's yourself in business, whether it's my wife, our nanny, Miss Stacy, like you talked about. It's leaning on what I will call the who's in my life as well. You talk about the book, Who Not How. I know a lot on this podcast, and it's something that you and I have really been trying to implement in our day-to-day in our business. And it's kind of looking around and saying, okay, what do I have to get done? What does Bryan have to get done? Who can help me get those things done? And where can I support and add value to ensure that those items get done? So it's a mixture of that. It's a competitive edge and just drivenness that I think I've always had as a person and as a kiddo. And when you get older in life, it kind of stacks on itself. And you talk about personal development. It's like you read one book and you're like, man, that is good. That is really good. I've never looked at it in that point of view. And you listen to podcasts and someone that, you went to that podcast because an author of a book you just read was there. And then they say, oh, well, I got an idea from this other book. And you're like, well, damn, if he got an idea from that, or she got an idea there, let me go get that too. And it just, it compounds on itself. I know you talked about a podcast a couple weeks ago about compounding, and it's the same thing in knowledge and business. It's always just pushing and going forward and being intentional with those 168 hours that we all have. Yeah,
no, that's really well said. And it's actually super insightful because, it's not just about you doing everything, but you still do accomplish a lot individually. And obviously as being a key component to the team and to multiple teams in your life, like all the different things that are important to you, whether it's your family, whether it's CF Capital, whether it's, really contributing in the community, being a friend, being a brother, being a son, and all these things, not only just all of the professional things. So I think that's really powerful. But one of the things to me that really stands out is your drive, truthfully. And like you talked about the competitive, just the truth of who you are, to the core. But like, if you were to really describe that drive, like if maybe there's just a guess and maybe there's just a curious nature of this question to say, well, where does that come from? Like, where is that drive? Because it's not, maybe not everyone brings it out, but I don't know if everyone has the level of drive that you have. It's almost like my dog, Bruno, like this German Shepherd. I mean, like if you see this dog around a ball, like he is going to get the ball at all costs. Like there's no doubt in his mind that ball is his. And if there's 3 balls in the yard, he's going to corner them and they're going to become his and no one's going to get it. And if the ball is moving, he's going to grab that ball. And it's the same thing with, with you and just your commitment to excellence across everything. So where does that drive come from?
I think it comes from a handful of different places. Nowadays, as a father, it's okay. Show them how to, go out and work hard and hustle and grind and really make things happen. Previously, I mean, like a lot of adolescent boys, it's competition. It's to say, hey, look, I'm going to be better than you are.
Right.
And there's nothing you can do about it. Like I'm going to get, whether it's a sporting event, I don't care if we're running on the treadmill next to one another, I'm going to go harder, faster, longer, whatever it takes. But in all seriousness, you grow up, you mature some, you realize that, at least I have in my life, my faith has gotten deeper and I've been given a certain amount of gifts from the big guy upstairs. I think I have no more or better gifts than someone else. I just have kind of shined a light on my gifts and say, where do I fit in at, and how can I best amplify those gifts, and where do I play on the team the best? And then it's go be great with those gifts that you've been given. Everyone always uses baseball analogies in our business world, right. Whatever it is. No one wants to talk about soccer. No one wants to talk about basketball. When it comes to commercial real estate, man, it's what inning are we in? What this? It's always baseball. And so the way I look at it is, pick a position, whatever position you want to be, whether catcher, center fielder, whatever. You got to have a balance to be a really great team. You can't have all King Griffey Juniors, on the team. You got to have people. You got to have a great pitcher. You got to have a great catcher, first base, all, the whole thing. And so it's figure out where you're at on that team and be the best damn teammate that you can be there. And to me, it gets back to, again, my drive comes back to accountability and to say, hey man, like Tyler supports me. Like you support me, you support my wife, you support my kids more than you probably realize. And you know what? I'm going to be right there for you, and I'm going to support you, and I'm going to support Katie, and shout out Bruno. I'm going to support you too, Bruno, and make sure you get a couple extra balls. So it gets back to that too, man. It's a conglomerate of I'm competitive to a fault sometimes, but also I really want to give back in a world in a big way, because again, God has blessed me with talents and he's been able to kind of open my eyes to things like personal development. And then it's go be great at those things so you can support other people and make it a better place. Yeah.
And you keep going back to accountability, and it's actually lighting. It's like that light bulb is coming up in my mind. And it's actually, I'm legitimately asking you these questions because I really am curious. And it's like, these are not loaded questions. I'm like, I know exactly what he's going to say, and this is going to make for a great podcast and all this stuff. But I'm like, wow, that's so true. Like the accountability factor is amazing because even if you're super driven, you're hyper driven, and you are competitive, and maybe there's a little bit of immaturity and to some degree in that hyper competitive adolescent thinking, as you mentioned. But as you continue to grow, there's obviously gifts in that. And it's not about, I believe in business, it's not about necessarily competing. It's about creating, but using that energy in a way that you're competing with yourself. You're competing with your previous version of yourself. You're competing with the previous version of your company. Your team is competing with the previous version of itself. And it's not competing in that, I hate this other person, or I hate this other company, or I hate my quote unquote competitors, and then I'm going to crush them at all costs. It's just that I demand more of myself, and I find, value in continuing to grow in that capacity. But, the accountability factor to me, it really does seem like it's that cornerstone, in that when it becomes more than just about you and like your ego of like, I won and I went faster and I did more, then something magical happens. Because when you're doing this to say, look, it's not just about me, but when I do this, other people benefit. That's why, like, one of the things you and I love about our sort of tagline or our purpose behind our business is elevating communities together. And it's not just about us, but it can be about each other's families. It can be about the families that are involved in the properties that we acquire, the families that are involved, who invest with us, the families that are involved in living near the properties that we invest, or all of these things. I mean, like there's so many dominoes. And I just think that accountability, like I'm just realizing it like to a really high degree in this conversation, that accountability allows you to become greater. And to me, that's like, dude, the abundance mentality is like at play right then. Everybody wins. What would you add to that?
It all gets back to it. You just said it at the very end there, the abundance mentality. And it's almost, if you just think about it in your own terms and yourself and how far can you go, it's almost a selfish mentality, which will get you a certain, you're going to hit a ceiling if that's your mentality. But with the abundance mentality, there is no ceiling. Like you just keep going and it never stops. And that's not something that I was born with by any means. And it has definitely been something that I've had to grow into recently. And I can't remember if we've talked about it in the past, but it's something that definitely sticks with me. It's an old, I believe, African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And that's something that I've really tried to implement in my life. And I think when one of the original episodes, we talked about kind of our plans and intentionality, and it was probably 10 years ago, I said, all right, I set out on this quest and I'm going to become, I'm going to launch my own private equity firm, and it's going to buy up all kinds of multifamily, and I'm going to be the CEO, and all these people are going to work for me. And it makes me realize, and almost you can see me laughing now at myself, how green I was, and how thankfully my viewpoint has shifted, because I certainly wouldn't have found success if that continued to be my viewpoint, because it really is that abundance mindset and mentality, and going out and supporting others and having other folks hold us accountable. And what's cool about our industry is, there's competition to a certain degree, but we say it all the time. I truly believe this. We don't have competitors. We have nothing but colleagues. Like that's what's so unique about our industry is we can be entrepreneurial and go out, and just because there's other groups that are buying similar type of assets and properties we are, like we can do deals with them, we can do deals outside of them, we can share our partners with them, and they can share their partners with us. And we do this all the time. I have conversations all the time with groups that are just like ours, and all we do is talk and just share best practices and say, what are you doing? What are we doing? Like, how can we all raise the bar together, and how can something that you're doing make me better? And hey, here's something that I'm doing that we found success with. Now you take it and you go implement it, and you be better, and you make your firm better, and company and all of your residents and your family, and yada, 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 and just make everybody better, and have that abundance mentality like you're talking about.
Yeah. And I think that there's a certain healthy level of competition to where it's almost like you're driven in like, hey, like I actually, this past weekend, I was playing one-on-one basketball, which I haven't done in forever, but it was so much fun because I was with this guy, and his friend of mine. It's actually the husband of, this woman that my wife works with. And we were playing basketball in his new basketball goal, and it was a blast because there's a lot to be said about the competitive juices that flow, and he's very competitive. But it was a competition in that we were both trying to obviously beat each other in the basketball game, but it wasn't like I'm gonna stomp on you when I win, I'm gonna gloat, I'm gonna make fun of you. But it's almost like this thing where it's like this spirit of competition that's like fun, and like that's kind of, I feel like there's sort of an ascension in commercial real estate that you see, like especially when you kind of rise those ranks and you ascend those ranks, you look around and it's not like, hey, I'm going to destroy you, I'm going to put you out of business. It's like, hey, let's see what you do. And like, let's support each other. And then when you get there, like, hey, I'll connect you in this way. And I think that's really cool. But I also was thinking about, because the other side of that is like driven by fear. I almost think that the competitiveness of like, I'm going to stomp you out is driven mostly by fear. And to me, I don't think there's near the upside when you're driven by inspiration. Mm-hmm. Like, and I almost look at it back, and I don't know who said this or who mentioned this, but it's enlightened self-interest. If you think about it, I think it may have been John Azaraf, which big shout out to John Azaraf as a former Elevate guest, but he talks about enlightened self-interest in being, well, the abundance mentality obviously benefits you. right? Because you're giving, but you're also receiving. And so I think it's an enlightened self-interest when you step into that. And so I just think there's a lot of value in that. But as we continue to grow, I want to switch gears a little bit, because the vehicle, right? The vehicle for us is real estate. The vehicle for us is multifamily real estate. And we've had a lot of success lately. We have a ton of momentum. And I don't know about you. I know that we talk about this all the time, but any of the listeners, momentum is almost one of the most important components in real estate and in business in general. And so, let's talk a little bit about what we've been up to recently. Obviously, we just closed a 250 unit deal last week. We've got another deal that we're tracking on closing here within the next month and a half. We've got tons of things in the pipeline. So I want to talk about what we're working on, maybe a brief case study on a deal that we just closed, a little bit, some of the hiccups we ran into, some of the challenges, how we sourced the deal, that kind of stuff. But I also want to talk about from there, what else we're seeing in the environment, so that we can give the listeners a sense of, hey, what's going on between our noggins. I think we've got a couple things going on in there, right? We've got at least one or two thoughts that we could share. So where would you like to start? Would you like to start on the deal that we just closed and maybe just a quick synopsis there?
Yeah, sure. There's a lot to unpack there. Let's talk about what you just mentioned. That, to me, we'll kind of talk high level and drill it back down. We are in the relationship business, is what I always say. I'm not in as much the multifamily or apartment business. I'm in the relationship business. Now, multifamily apartments, that's our widget, but at the end of the day, it's all about relationships. And really, we're farmers. We planted seeds years ago, and you talk about that momentum. Well, it's harvest season, and some of those are coming to sow now, because it's not an industry where you can just wake up one day and say, hey, I'm going to make a few phone calls in a couple of weeks. I'm going to start putting deals together and go out and really build a business like what we're doing. Like, we're not running around just quote unquote doing deals, but really building a business and being intentional about it and developing those relationships. And some of those take years and years of deposits. And I don't know if we ever get to cash any of them on some of them, but hopefully we can support other folks along the way. So what are we seeing kind of in the environment? What are we doing with some of our current deals? Well, kind of high level, the environment, it's been an interesting 12 to 18 months. No doubt about it. We could spend another 3 podcasts talking about that, and how some macroeconomic trends and how they are influencing our kind of micro little sector of the commercial real estate world. But I'll kind of try to drill it down into that 90-second overview. Essentially, commercial real estate on itself, you can't look at holistically, because what's happening in the retail world, the office world, the hospitality world, very different than what's happening in our industry. Multifamily is perceived safety for a lot of investors and a lot of institutional players. So you're seeing a tremendous flood of capital come in. And about 1.5 years ago, we thought we might see some pricing discounts. Given what was going on with COVID, those have actually matured into pricing premiums in a lot of ways. And you've got a lot of a lot of groups that are either coming into multifamily for the first time, or just doubling, tripling, quadrupling down on multifamily and saying enough of these other sectors. I want nothing but multifamily and nothing but industrial. And so it comes down to, how do you separate yourself from the herd there? And it gets back to what I was just talking about, is relationships. We have, like you said, we just closed a deal, 250 unit deal over in the state of Indiana, and that was purely relationship driven. That wasn't a deal that was broadly blasted out onto the market. It was something that came to us, kind of what we in our industry call a pocket listing, from a broker who had a great relationship with that owner. We do have another opportunity that we have under contract that we'll be closing on here in a couple months, that was a direct to seller type of opportunity. And again, it's all relationship based for us. It gets back to what I mentioned, that it's not as much we're in commercial real estate, we're in relationships. And how can we help support people? How can we help support these sellers and get them the, from their point of view, the disposition prices that they need to hit their internal goals? And how can we structure it for, on our end, the correct acquisition price to support our partners and our investors? So it's a very dynamic world. We joke a lot that we'll get information on Monday, and by Thursday, it seems like it's old news and it doesn't matter anymore. And, we'll have a conversation. We'll say, oh gosh, did you see that draft of, an investment summary or a pro forma model? And man, if you're not looking at the most recent one, you might as well be looking at a different deal, because things are just, it's I think a sign of what's happening truly across the nation, across the world right now, is things are just happening so fast and things are so dynamic, and the flow of information in today's world is just so much quicker than it's ever been. So you've always got to have your finger on the pulse. You've got to have those relationships. You got to have third-party relationships like guys in insurance or guys in the debt fields or property management. You have to have the most current information to date. Otherwise, you're going to get blown past.
Hey guys, just a quick word from our sponsor and we'll be right back to the show. This episode of Elevate is brought to you by CF Capital. And you know how much I love real estate and how it can be a vehicle towards creating any outcome that you want in your life, which is really why we created CF Capital. It's a real estate investment firm that focuses on acquiring and operating multifamily assets that provide stable cash flow, capital appreciation, and a margin of safety for our investors, for our partners, and for the people that we serve. Our team leverages its expertise in acquisitions and management to provide investors like you with superior risk-adjusted returns while placing a premium on preserving capital. Our mission is to provide property investment and asset management solutions to help investors maximize their returns by investing in high-value multifamily communities. Our philosophy is that we can elevate communities together through this process. And I want to invite you to go check out cfcapllc.com, because we have a free ebook that's called The Bottom Line, the 10 ways to increase cash flow in an apartment complex. And I want to tell you that this is a value-packed ebook. So I want to invite you to go check that out right now at cfcapllc.com. I think you're going to get a ton of value just from reading this, whether you apply it to your own business or whether you educate yourself further on what it would look like if you invested with CF Capital. So go check that out at cfcapllc.com. Again, that's cfcapllc.com. And enjoy the rest of the show. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And it's just, we're going through a rapid transformation of not only the economy domestically, internationally, it's all connected, of course. But you look at like the level of liquidity that's been injected into the environment, which is we're still seeing lagging indicators. And of course, like you and we're nerds about this stuff. Like we pay attention to it constantly, but we have to remain consistent with how we're reviewing and we're, gleaning insights based on what's happening, because it's constantly evolving, it's constantly changing. But we also have to make sort of bets, so to speak, about where things are going and read the tea leaves about where things may go next, right? And one of the things that I know you and I have talked a lot about is inflation. And, I know a lot of real estate investors and people in general, whether they understand what inflation truly is or not, are feeling it, right? You're seeing costs rise for consumer goods. You're seeing costs rise in the grocery stores. You're of course seeing costs rise in lumber prices and new construction. I mean, I know you guys are finishing up building a new home right now, and many people who are involved in, new construction of their own home or just buying a home. I mean, it's crazy what people are seeing in that environment, but it all is interconnected. And we see this in multifamily, and it results in rising rents. It results in compressed cap rates. It results in, insurance, not insurance. Well, that's another topic for discussion. We could talk about the volatility there. But it results in interest rates, perhaps to a certain degree. And so I just think it's really interesting. And there's no shortage of intellectual, I guess, nuggets there in terms of things to learn. But it's a constant learning process. But it comes down to, you were talking about accountability earlier, surrounding yourself with people who not only will hold you accountable, but also can give you insights based on their expertise. Because we can't know everything all at once. You know what I mean? Is there anything you would say to that?
No, you're absolutely right. And I think it's something that we all don't do enough is just slow down and spend some time in thought.
You and I definitely not do enough of that.
And say, I almost try to time block in my schedule and say, let's educate myself. How can I either read something? How can I have a conversation with, a professional in an industry that touches ours, or a third-party provider within our industry, and just give me your expertise, your guidance, your advisory, and then you can do that every day and then step back and say, how is this influencing everything else, because to your point, there's so many different data points out there, and you can't pick just one and make all your decisions based on that. You have to surround yourself with folks that are in the trenches, folks that have been there, I'd say quote unquote before. There's no really before to what we're going through right now. Like we're living through history. But it's just a matter of trying to stay on top of it, trying to stay educated, and surrounding yourself with other folks that are as driven and hold you accountable and make sure that you've got your finger on the pulse. Because to your point, we're thinking in bets. We all are on some level. And it's how do all these data points and how does all this flood of information, how can we disseminate that and make the best choices we can based on the information that we have available? And
I think what's really cool about this is like the repetition then shows up eventually as a feeling. And like you and I were talking about this the other day, we have, hundreds of millions of dollars in our pipeline. And I say in our potential acquisition pipeline. And this is a tremendous amount of multifamily deals in our target markets. And we're blessed to have these type of opportunities to review. But when you and I, we can dig through underwriting, we can dig through the particulars of each asset, we can dig through all of the different factors. But what happens, and we both are seeing this more and more, and I know that many of the listeners who've continued to stack on more experience are starting to feel this, but it's you feel this intuition. You say, look, this deal makes sense, and I can tell you why some reasons, but there's other reasons why I may not be able to describe to you exactly why. And it's this feeling. All of these data points and all of this time blocking and all of these conversations, they all come together to a point where the cells of your body can feel it. Like you're in alignment with, this is the right investment to make. Do you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. It's almost like you get all green lights. All of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, like that hit and that hit. And we joke all the time. Typically our first response to a deal is no, and our second response is hell no.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, and it is a matter of repetitions, and it's like anything else. You get faster at it and better at it, but then when you do, you don't ever think that you're the fastest or the best at it. It's go surround yourself with other folks that are faster than you and are making wiser decisions than you. I was reading what was it? Stephen Kotler's book, The Art of Impossible.
Yes.
Is that right?
Big shout out to Stephen Kotler.
That's right. Former guest here on the show.
That's right.
He was interviewing one of the big wave surfers on it, and he was talking, I think his name was Laird Hamilton.
Yes.
He was talking about how he was riding like these crazy 50-foot waves, and most people are like, holy, cow, like how can you do that? And he's like, well, I didn't just roll out of bed and start riding 45, 50-foot waves. Like you missed it when I was on the 4-foot wave and the 5-foot wave and the 6 and 7 and 8, and all these little ones. And it's not a massive leap from me. It was just little things stacked on top of one another. And I think that's getting back to what we've done over the past number of years, really, is all these little things stacked on top of one another to get yourself to that point where you do have that intuition and you can make quick decisions in a constantly and dynamically changing world right now, but also have those relationships to surround yourself to say, hey, keep pushing me and keep making sure that, I'm sharp, and otherwise that 50-foot wave is going to come down and crush me.
Yeah,
right now.
No doubt about it. And remaining humble to say, look, yes, we've come a long way, but we still have a long way to go. We're going to continue to learn. We're going to continue to get better. And guess what? There will be lumps along the way. There will be mistakes. I can't tell you how many mistakes we've probably made this week that we may or may not be even aware of at this point. But we're, continuing to get more precise. We're continuing to ask better questions and to consider that, hey, you know what, maybe there's an alternative, maybe there's a new direction, maybe there's an adjustment or a course correction that we need to make in whatever direction it is. So I think that's really cool. But thinking back to, obviously we're talking about from a high level, we're looking around the landscape and we're saying, all right, demand from capital markets, we're looking at assets, we're looking at inflation in assets, we're looking at competition in assets, even though we were talking about competition earlier. From a macro standpoint, there's no doubt that results in changes in asset prices, cap rates, yields, and so forth. And obviously the same as it relates to equity and sort of demand for a place, right? Because a dollar today is worth much more than a dollar tomorrow. And we're seeing that in real time right now. Mm-hmm. So there's all these fluctuations. But then as we drill down and we say, all right, we find a deal, it feels right, it's in alignment, it checks the boxes for us, and now we're executing, right? When we just purchased this recent deal, we ran into some roadblocks. And it's like you go into every deal and you expect the unexpected. But it's interesting because every deal is so unique. Every deal has its own challenges. Every deal has its own opportunities. And on this particular deal, it was so funny. I mean, actually, it wasn't funny at the time, but there was a ground lease on this property, a 250 unit property. What else? I mean, we had insurance volatility. It was crazy. I mean, we had pricing that came in like, I want to say it was like 50 or 60% higher than what we expected.
Yes.
Obviously, ultimately, we solved that issue, but it was really interesting. What would you say about that?
Yeah, I think it gets back and really speaks to the power of partners. You just mentioned it a minute ago about being humble and realizing that we can't do it on our own. And it's like, yeah, as a young guy, you think you're going to take on the world. But in this industry, it's like, no kidding. Like, we have to have partners. You mentioned earlier, too. We can't know everything about everything. We have to have best-in-class partners that help us jump over those hurdles. And when we run into insurance issues, we have to go to our partners and say, help us solve this. Here is our challenge. Let's identify it. Let's discuss what we're going to do, and let's solve it. Let's not all freak out and run around. Let's get to the root of this thing. And it just gets back to, in our world, and we're very blessed to have amazing partners. But again, I think it's a pretty good metaphor for life in general, kind of tying it back to what we were talking about earlier. But I mean, like, you have to have great partners outside your firm. You have to have great partners like yourself inside the firm. You got to have a great partner at home, because if I don't have a great partner at home, I can't show up here. But yeah, getting back to things that we solved along the way, it's something that we are constantly navigating. You always talk about it, that a flight is really only on course at the beginning, at takeoff, and at ending. And along the way, it is constantly course correcting. 99% of the time your plane is off course, and you are leaning on professionals to help get you back on course. Whether you're a pilot, you're talking to the guys on the ground, you're talking to aviation, whoever. Just like in our world, we are talking to, this morning we have a call with the debt professionals. Tomorrow I got a call with the property management team. The day after that, the insurance guys. So it's constantly leaning on those partners and making sure we're putting them in a position and supporting them so that they can then support us and ensure that we can land this plane together.
One thing I really wanted to talk to you about on this particular episode was, we were talking about obviously course correcting along the way. There's all of these different professionals that we surround ourselves with. There's all these relationships that keep us or bring us back on track when 99% of the time we need to make a quick course correction. One of the things that's obviously critical in this business is deal flow, it's acquisitions, it's making things happen, obviously on an asset management perspective and executing on a business plan, but you can never execute on the business plan unless you make an acquisition. One of the things that I think that you are outstanding at in your own activity within our business is building on relationships with brokers and communicating with brokers and really just facilitating the environment for business creation. So are there any tips or things that you'd like to share that really have served you? Obviously, you and I have the background of being brokers previously. And so obviously that served you in this regard. But is there anything in particular that really stands out that's really served you as you've continued to stack on this?
Well, our background is unique, no doubt about that. So it helps kind of put us on the same playing field. But really, even if we didn't have that background, it's a matter of how to best support other folks, and it's speaking their language and to say, hey, this individual helps control a lot of the deal flow. These brokers do in our industry, and so what can I do to make their life easier? What can I do to support them and make sure that they're incentivized properly, that they get paid? And these guys all primarily work on commission, so they're not getting paid unless a deal gets done. So it's either obviously buying deals through them is a big one, but it's just talking their language and understanding and respecting them and knowing how we can help them. And it gets down to adding value. And I've had multiple guys call me and say, I've never thought about that, or, hey, no one's ever told me that before. And it's because I think part of it is our background, and we've walked a mile in those shoes. But I always try to take the mindset of how can I add value to that person, because they're not going to add value to me unless I help them out along the way. And if I just take, yeah, you might get away with it once, twice, but that's not sustainable in the long run. And it gets, it's one of those things. If you put enough deposits in, someday that check's going to cash for you, and you don't know when it's going to be, and you can't go into it with the mindset of, okay, well, I'm going to give. When am I going to get this back? When am I going to get this back? You got to just give. You just got to keep giving. Just always be giving. And it's a lot with what we do with our, education-based marketing system, like just give, support people, help people, value add. And at the end of the day, you'll get it sometime in the long run.
Yeah. And man, there's so much good stuff there. I mean, one of the things that really comes to mind is being valuable to valuable people.
Yes.
I mean, it's basically a principle. We could talk about all the new shiny tactics, this, that, and the other, but it's about principles. It's about helping other people and bringing expertise. If you have an expertise, as your background suggests that you do, bring that to someone else and give that to them. Allow them to serve their client to a better capacity that's going to allow them to be effective, and it's going to allow them to be more valuable. Another example of the abundance mindset in action. So I just think that's awesome. And man, you're talking about speaking their language, making their life easier and so forth, but this is a compounding effort. This is a compounding activity. The other thing that you do is you get back to people quickly, you give them feedback so that there's no ambiguity, right? The other thing that I want to dive into just briefly before we, transition and wrap today's episode up, because this has been super good, by the way. This has been really, really good. But in terms of your own, give me a sense of your own, how your mind works, because we have heavy deal flow. You lead us in acquisitions, and we look at many deals every week. And obviously we're executing business plans, we're raising capital, we're making things happen, not only at the properties that we own, but we're making things happen in due diligence and all these different things. But we're also sifting through deals, not only feeling it, but intellectually understanding. Mm-hmm. Give me a sense of compartmentalization. Is there a level of compartmentalization that your mind works with so that you can focus? You talked about time blocking earlier. Maybe this has to do with this, but give me a sense of how your mind works and how you're able to extract enough understanding to be able to make effective decisions across different projects like that.
Well, there has to be. And we're in horse country. And the best way for me to describe it is blinders. You have to put blinders on, and we've said it a handful of times, but you have to be intentional. So when it's time to be in acquisition mode and to talk to brokers and to help add value and give them feedback and help them communicate with their owners or make introduction, it's all about that. I'm not thinking about what I'm doing that night, the following day. I'm not thinking about the asset management role of our business. I'm not thinking about the financing. I'm thinking about that and only that. And that's the biggest piece of feedback is in today's world, there's just so many distractions out there. And it seems so simple to be like, hey, yeah, just don't get distracted. But we live in a world where you pick up this phone, like something crazy. It's like 500 times a day just to look at it. And it's being intentional about saying, these are my things I have to get done today, and I'm going to put on blinders and get them done. And I try to do, it's a pretty easy mantra, but it's, hey, do the hard things first. Like if you've got 3, 4, 5 things to do today, get everything done, try to get everything done before noon that day. That way you're a successful day. Your day is successful before you hit lunchtime. And then everything else after that is almost like you're just cleaning up the pieces on some point. But you have to time block, you have to build in gaps, and just be intentional with every minute, every bit of those 168 hours that you have all week long.
Man, I got to give you a big shout out, because your organization, your diligence, your perseverance, your intentionality is second to none. And I am grateful to be your business partner. I'm grateful for everything that we're creating. And this is one of the reasons why I feel so good about selling, quote unquote, our company, selling what we're doing, selling our vision. And I mean that in the greatest service mentality sense that I could. Mm-hmm. And, when we're raising capital, when we're inviting investors to invest alongside us, I know that together and with our team, we will do whatever it takes. We do whatever it takes. And,
yes,
we show up every single day, but I think it's so cool. And it's one of those things too, where you're in such alignment to execution. It's not just, we're not selling snake oil. You know what I mean? We're not selling something that's going to take advantage of someone, but we're offering opportunities to people who want to participate in real estate without all the headaches, right? We deal with these headaches. And sometimes we get better as a result because problems are gifts, right? Problems and challenges can actually be, the silver lining so that we can become better, so that we can actually receive a blessing that we would have never imagined before. But to me, as being sort of our investor relations, individual who really, serves and supports the people that invest alongside us. By the way, of course, we're participating. We invest in every single one of our deals as well. And it's great because the abundance mentality can then be applied in this capacity. But to me, it's like, man, I have no problem, because if this opportunity makes sense for certain people, or if these opportunities that we participate in make sense for people, then that's great. And if not, there's no attachment. I have literally no attachment, because the world, money, finance, real estate, everything is unlimited. It's unlimited. And so to me, it's just so exciting. And I get to do what I love every single day, and that's connect with people and help them build a bigger future and a greater future. But that comes with this teamwork, that comes with this accountability, that comes with this intentionality, and it's all interrelated. Like, we talk about personal development, personal growth. We talk about your kids having goals and things like that. Like, this is all interrelated. That's why I'm so passionate about having these conversations, because the more that we have them, the more people realize, well, wait a minute, I can join that. I can create my own thing. We can collaborate. We don't have to compete with each other. We don't have to stomp each other out, but together we're better. So, man, I just wanted to give you that acknowledgement, but is there any parting thoughts or words of wisdom that you'd like to share? Is there anything that we didn't cover today before we wrap?
Oh gosh. I mean, we could keep going and going. There's a lot we didn't cover, a lot I look forward to covering, hopefully in future episodes. And I do want to note, you said earlier, canned responses, things like that. I want to make sure everyone knows, while we work together every day, while we're in person doing this, I had no idea what we were going to talk about today. And that's the best way to do it. It's be authentic. Be authentic to yourself. Be authentic to others, always have that serving mindset. It was, hey, let's come in, let's put the headsets on, and let's see how we can add value to the listeners today. What can we do to help bring them value in their day? But man, as far as parting words, there's been something that I've been trying to live recently, and I'm very thankful for the kind words you just said, but it's really, I've been trying to live in a state of gratitude. And I wish everyone, not to get all philosophical, but I wish everyone would live in more of a state of gratitude. Because like I talked earlier, there's so many distractions in this world, and there's so much you get wrapped up in, and you think that you need to be doing or should be doing. But really, it's about slowing down and focusing on the positives and being a happier person, and finding your way in this world, and finding the things that fill your cup up, because that's what you're going to be excellent at. That's what you ask about my dedication. I can be dedicated, and I can spend hours and hours, and you're getting emails from me at all different times of the week, because I love it. Like, I love doing this, and this is something that I enjoy doing, but it's because I live in a state of gratitude as well. And we talked about this about a month ago. In January, everyone goes through their new routine and sets their new goals. And you hear people say, oh, I'm going to do no negative January. I'm not going to have any negativity this week or this day or maybe this whole month. And I kind of thought to myself, well, why does it have to be just January? I just came off of no negative June. Like, I'm going to do my best. Don't foresee that I didn't have negative thoughts throughout, but catch yourself, and kind of refocus that energy into the happier things and the positives that we have. And when you find yourself caught up in one of those challenges that you're talking about, and you're in the midst of a deal, or you have a challenge at home, there's a gift in every challenge. We say that to one another all the time. Find the gift in this challenge. I don't know what it is. Sometimes you got to peel a lot of layers of that onion back to find that gift, but know that if you find it, it's going to make you better in the moment, and more importantly, it's going to make you better in the future too. And those challenges will become easier hurdles to overcome in the future, and you can actually use those as an asset for yourself going forward.
Yeah, and you're retraining your brain to look for them. And once you look for something, when you seek, you find. Right? It's a biblical reference, and that's timeless wisdom, and it's true. Right? So put it into action, put it into practice, and when you seek, the gift in a challenge, you'll find that. When you seek the problem in everything, when you seek the lack in your life and the lack of, resources that you have, you get more of that as well. And so I think there's so much value in that. And it comes down to vibration as well, but go ahead.
Yeah. Now you're talking my language. You've seen in my office, I have one of my favorite quotes from the Bible. It hangs on my wall, Matthew chapter 7, verse 7, where he says, "Ask and you shall receive, seek and you shall find, knocketh and it shall be opened unto you." And it gets back to exactly that, and retraining your brain and your mind and asking for things and seeking things and knocking on those doors.
Yeah. And it's super cool because you can literally trace science. You can literally trace biology. You can trace all this stuff to what you just shared, not only philosophically, spiritually, and all these things, but then when you start to align yourself and you frame yourself to a vision of gratitude, and you allow life to unfold in vibrating on that type of wavelength, as corny as it sounds, that's when things start to get easier. That's when things start to move. And that's when momentum starts to carry you through. You're talking about riding 50-foot waves. This is about riding 50-foot waves in life and in business and in real estate and all these things. So, man, I'm just super grateful for you. I'm super grateful to have had this opportunity. I want to invite the listeners, if you have not already, go check out our ebook. Go to cfcapllc.com. It's called The Bottom Line, the 10 ways to increase cash flow in an apartment complex.
That's right.
And the reason why we wrote this book is not only to educate and put the abundance mentality into practice, but it's to show people, what is it that we do? What are some things that we do to a multifamily property to add value, so that when people invest alongside us, they can receive that upside as well. And so I think it's a beautiful thing. But Bryan, is there anywhere else where listeners can learn more about you or anything else that you're up to?
Yeah, absolutely. At our company website, cfcapllc.com. Again, that's cfcapllc.com. In addition to our ebook, come sign up for our newsletter. We send something out every month, what's going on in our worlds, both personally, both professionally. We share news articles that we find very valuable. Come sign up for our blog. We write blogs a couple times a month and share that kind of information. And really, that's a good peek behind the curtain for us. But we have all kinds of information on our website. From there, you can find our personal Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, where we're very active, and we just want to stay engaged with the audience. So please come reach out. I love it when I get the emails that someone has blocked time on my calendar. We have a feature on our website where you can come and you can book time with us. Spend 15 minutes, spend a half hour this week with us. Ask us questions about specific deals, ask us questions high level. Just come geek out with me and talk microeconomics with me and what's going on in this world. And a lot of the times when I get to just kind of ramble, I come to my own realizations, and it helps me in the end by serving you guys. So just come find us, come reach out, and we'd love to connect.
Yeah, and draft off our relationships, draft off our commitment, our perseverance, our diligence, our organization, our team, because together, there's opportunities where you could potentially invest with us in the future. So again, I just want to echo what Bryan just said. Just go visit cfcapllc.com, because man, we're just getting started. There's a lot of big things in our future, and we invite the listener to join us on that, because that's the way to find out about deals. That's the way to find out about opportunities. Everybody talks about how there's no deals, there's no good deals out there. Guess what? We have them. We continue to find them. We continue to source them. And so it is our honor to do that. But Bryan, next time, I can't wait to see the evolution of what you become in round 4, because each and every time, man, you keep getting better. So cheers to you. Cheers to the Flaherty family that just growing like a weed. And my friend, I appreciate you being on Elevate. And until next time, we'll see you then.
Thank you, sir. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely. Elevate Nation, we will see you next time. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Thank you for listening to Elevate. If you enjoy this episode, be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and pay it forward by sharing with a friend. Most importantly, take this opportunity to elevate your results by taking immediate action on what you learned. For more, visit elevatepod.com.